So it probably has something to do with the fact that I make videos every single day, or at least I have a video ready to go up every single day, that I get questions asking me where I actually find all my video ideas. And I think it's especially the case because a lot of the software that I end up looking at is software that basically no one has ever heard of. Obviously, I can look at things like Ranger or LF or things like that, but then I'll go and find things like Disconaut or Bandwidth, which basically no one has ever used. So I can see why people would ask me that question. Now, there's a couple of different places I find the topics from, and I've talked about some of them in the past, but I haven't really put it into like one big video, I guess. So this wasn't really the case, I would say, even maybe 5 or so months back. But a lot of my video topics now actually come from you guys in the comment section and also on my Discord. So what I used to do in the past is I would occasionally get some random topic in the comment section and then just add it to my list of, things I need to do at some point. Now what I've been doing instead is saying, okay, since people are asking me in the comment section, that means that somebody wants to watch this. And if somebody wants to watch this, then there's probably going to be other people who also want to watch it as well. So I should probably move that ahead on my list and then go through my backlog at some later date, because the backlog's going to be there the entire time. But if someone wants me to do a video on something now, then it makes more sense to go and make that video in some sort of a timely manner rather than going through the backlog. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to make a video on every single topic that people suggest. Sometimes people are like, hey, can you do a distro review on this really boring distro? I'm like, no, I can't do that. As much as I appreciate the suggestion isn't the bad thing. There's some topics where I'm just like, I don't know how I can make this an interesting video. Where it's like, okay, if you want to do a review of some, custom Arch ISO that's basically Arch with pretty configs. I can say the configs are pretty, but that's about all I can say for that video. Whereas if someone suggested, here's one example. Someone suggested that I do a video on MPD recently. Now, I haven't actually recorded it for next week. I'll do that the week after. But MPD is something that I can expand out to a multiple episode series if I wanted to, because I could do the main daemon part, and then I could also talk about things like NPC, NC, PCP, whatever, the client that has the really long name. That one. And there's other things I can look at as well. So that's something that I think really fits for the channel. Or something like, hey, you've done a video on snaps and on app images. Do a video on flat packs as well, and then maybe do a video comparing all of them. Things like that are really good suggestions, and I really do appreciate getting those. And putting them forward in the list just honestly makes more sense. And after that, what I'll typically do is go to websites like Reddit. Now, I don't actually read Reddit directly because that's a waste of time. What I do instead is I take the subreddits that are actually worth any time actually looking at, which is basically the distro subreddits, so Arch, Ubuntu, Gentoo, Void. Mainly, I look at Arch because Arch is where you typically get new applications being shown. Gentoo and Void, it's usually Gentoo and Void specific problems, and Ubuntu, sometimes you get reasonable stuff, but mainly Ubuntu is there because people like to post about, Linux news on that one. So that's why I keep that one around. And besides those, also r/command line is really good because a lot of people like to make a new application and then they'll actually go and advertise it there. So that's a good place to find really, really new stuff. Now, there's a lot of stuff on there that is a little bit too alpha to be covered on the channel. I kind of want something to be, have some sort of functionality before I actually bother covering it, because some people are basically posting, the absolute skeleton of an application, although sometimes even post the idea for an application without any code actually backing it up. And those things I obviously have to avoid. And then I also look at the main Linux subreddit, because typically you'll get a lot of industry news, you'll get a lot of, here's some, just general Linuxy news. And it's not usually applications, mainly news for that one. And also, you get a lot of people asking Linuxy questions. Obviously, you have a lot of the, people just all saying Linux is wonderful. I don't want to say that because I don't know if YouTube's going to demonetize the video for saying, what I'm trying to think of. You have people saying that Linux is wonderful, and everyone already knows that. But there are also people being like, okay, what about this idea compared to this idea? And things like that I can actually turn into video topics, or people just generally asking Linuxy questions. Those are things I can also turn into topics without much hassle. Now, after that, generally where I go to lately has actually been to the Arch BBS. So that's the Arch Linux forums. And I don't look at most of it because most of it is generally, Arch questions. How do I get this set up? How do I do this thing? This thing broke because I'm not paying attention. Things of that nature. But there is one, I don't know, sub-forum. There's one section of the forum, one section of BBS, which is really good because it's just a constant stream of new applications. And these aren't like the applications you see on r/command line. These are things that I don't know where these people found them. They were dug out of the depths of the internet, and some of them are really, really cool. I need to go and actually look at that more often, but I typically forget that it exists, and then I remember about it like 2 weeks later, and there's a massive wall again, and I just don't get around to going through and actually looking at what I should actually cover on the channel. But that's a really good place to start scraping video ideas from, especially with the comments on there as well. Now, Reddit comments are kind of hit and miss. Some posts you'll get reasonable comments, like if someone's asking for, suggestions for a music player or suggestions for a web browser, or specifically if they're asking for suggestions that are saying, like, don't give me the really popular things. Don't say, you should use Firefox, you should use ungoogled Chromium. If people are asking for, like, give me things that aren't super popular, in those cases, you can sometimes get reasonable suggestions on Reddit. But the Arch BBS, the comments on there are just as weird as the posts on there because the comments are also pulling in random software from the depths of the internet where I have no idea where they're coming from. So you get the post where it's like that, and then all the comments are also like that as well. And if the comments aren't like that, you usually get people, saying something that can sort of prompt a video idea. And that makes it very easy to actually find these ideas. Now, because I make, 365 videos a year, which when you put it like that sounds like a lot of videos, you would think that I'd be running out of ideas fairly quickly. However, I typically replace the ideas maybe 2 to 3 per video. So if I make one video, it'll usually be replaced by 2 to 3 extra ideas. Now, not every single one of these ideas ends up making it to a video. Sometimes I write something down and then I look back and I'm like, okay, there's not really a video idea here. Now, usually that doesn't happen with software, but when it goes on to later things like, say, general vloggy things like this, sometimes those don't make it to a video. Those are usually things that get prompted by questions in the forum, questions on the comment section, or questions on Reddit, things like that. After that point, I'll usually go to news aggregation sites because even though fairly popular Linuxy news ends up making its way to Reddit at some point, there's still a lot of stuff that's really interesting to read about and really interesting to talk about that doesn't end up making its way there. So things like, say, a new Pinebook comes out or a new version of Ubuntu LTS, things like that will definitely make its way to Reddit. Those are fairly big pieces of news. But when it's something like, say, the Linux kernel changes its character line limit from 80 characters to 100 characters, it sometimes makes its way to Reddit, sometimes doesn't. So checking out those news aggregation sites from time to time actually, lets me make it so I can see that news still. Now, that by itself isn't really worth a video, but when it's a topic like that, I can also, infer a video from it. So, okay, why do we have 80 character line limits? Why are we still using them? What was the historical reason for using them? Is there any reason to keep them around? Things like that. That actually does make a video, even though the original news idea doesn't. There's still something that I can actually mine out of that, and I think that's where you can get some really interesting video topics actually coming from, because yeah, it's fun to cover the news sometimes, but if you can actually add some extra information that maybe some people didn't know, I think that's where you start getting these really fun videos to watch and really fun videos to make for me as well, because that's obviously going to be important. Obviously, I want to make videos that you guys enjoy, but if I'm not enjoying making them myself, it's going to be much harder to, hit the first requirement anyway. But then when it comes to the topics outside of Linux, like let's say I want to talk about something that's been happening at uni, or I want to talk about, I don't know, where my video ideas come from, things like that. Generally, topics like that, I can't really pinpoint where they're actually coming from, because it's usually just things that are happening in my life, and it just sort of, I don't know, sparks an idea in my mind, like, okay, well, that's something that, there's a shadow on my face, this is a really bad spot to record today. Videos like that, it's just like, okay, this idea has sort of just come to me, I'm going to write it down, and eventually I'll cover it on the channel. So, I think that pretty much wraps up where everything typically comes from. Now, There probably are other things that I'm missing, but that covers basically 99% of my video topics. So I think that's pretty much everything for me. I'll cut back to when I'm at home so I can read out my supporters.
Before I go, I would like to thank my supporters, so a special thank you to Joachim, Corbinian, Andrew, Craig, Nathan, Montazar, Joseph, Peter D. Road, Tony, Brennan, Donald, John, Merrick, Mikkel, Nephite, Tees, and Zilva. If you want to go and support my work, there'll be some links down below to my Patreon, Subscribestar, and Cointree, and all that sort of stuff. I've got my podcast, Tech Over Tea, available basically anywhere, and this channel is available on Library, BitTube, and BitChute if you want to watch it on a platform that isn't YouTube. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.